For all your medication and narcotic tracking needs, check out the LogRX app, created by career fire and EMS professionals. That's LOGRX.com.
This podcast is brought to you by Flex 7 from TenCate Protective Fabrics. Flexible, comfortable, and powered with the strength of enforced technology. Flex 7 outer shell fabric is made to move. To learn more, visit tencatefabrics.com/Flex 7.
In the world of firefighting and public safety, reliability is key. That's why for over 2 decades, first responders nationwide have trusted the FireStore as their go-to source for essential equipment, apparel, and accessories. Visit thefirestore.com online or in-store today.
The opinions, viewpoints, and advice shared in this podcast are solely those of the host, Dave McGlynn, and should not be interpreted as reflecting or endorsed by the Department of the Army or the Department of Defense Fire and Emergency Services.
All right. Welcome to another Fire Engineering Podcast, The Training Officer. I am your host, Dave McGlynn. For those of you that are familiar with the show, thank you for returning. Typically, we have about every month. It's like usually the first Friday of every month where we bring to you training nuggets, training information, subject matter experts, instructors, leaders, people from all over the country, all over the globe in our fire service, people that are in leadership, even in our military, to help give us a peace of mind of what it is that they have going on, as well as maybe some suggestions that can help us bring this back to our stations and improve our culture. If you are a first timer, thank you for joining in. Hopefully you can continue to follow along if you like what's going on. But we appreciate you guys logging in, following, viewing, however it is that you're streaming this. So tonight, I'm very fortunate because we're going down the science avenue, which is really cool because what we do is science, and that's pretty important stuff. So tonight I have 2 great guests, one of which I'm friends with, I've known for a while, and one I'm getting to know tonight. So tonight I'm joined by 2 people from SFRI. So I got Meghan Maloney. She's a manager of the education and training team with the Fire Safety Research Institute, as well as Jesse Marcotte, who's a part-time senior training and education coordinator with FSRI. And he's also a training chief out in Northville Township, Michigan. And he's a great guy. He's got a beautiful head of hair. I tell him every time I see him. But we're going to talk about some training stuff and everything they have going on, the research they do, and probably more of the value and the importance. So if you've been living under a rock, if you're not familiar with UL and FSRI, then we're bringing it to you. I hope you're paying attention because there's some good information. So with that, thank you both for joining me tonight. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. So just starting right off, I'll go with you first, Meghan, because you're the unfamiliar for me. So
nice to see you.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, your roles in FSRI, and maybe how you got involved with SFRI and what motivated you to contribute to the fire safety research and education piece.
Yeah. So thanks again for having us. Like Dave said, my name is Meghan Maloney, and I'm the manager of the education and training team at FSRI. And so getting here for me was kind of a windy road. My background is in education. I actually have a master's degree in education, and I was a middle school science teacher originally. And so I loved my job. It was very, very fun, but I was looking for something new and something to take me out of the classroom. And my sister is a volunteer firefighter. And so through, my passion and hearing about her experiences, when I saw the job posting for, at that time, an education and training specialist at FSRI, I was so excited for the opportunity to have my education experience meld with something that my family has been very passionate about, which is supporting her. And so I joined FSRI, like I said, as a specialist developing content, and have moved my way into the manager role, which I'm so fortunate about. So I am, again, so lucky to have this role that allows me to contribute to the fire service and support the mission of FSRI, as well as using my education background to do so. So that's about me.
Nice. Very cool. And then Jesse, same question to you, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, Jesse Marcotte, and I've been so fortunate to be a very small part of FSRI. And, my involvement with it is also a bit of a windy road. And I like to say that we can find a lot of success in our failures. And my own personal failure on the fire ground, because I'm a fire service person, is really what led me to wanting to know way more about a lot of the things that we do on scene. So I was fortunate that that incident that we had in 2006, I was working on a different project for graduate school in 2009. And that first study that I really noticed and caught my eye, understanding the structural stability of engineered lumber in fire conditions, was released. And that exposed me to the world of evidence-based tactics and fire science research. And it was a total game changer for me. So as I went along, my role with FSRI was simply just a student. I got to take all these courses that we're going to highlight through the Fire Safety Academy and at the different conferences they were offered at. And then I got to serve as a member of the Training Advisory Committee for FSRI. And then during that is when I had the opportunity to join the team in a part-time capacity as education and training coordinator.
Yeah, awesome stuff. I'm very familiar with your background, Megan. I tell you, so a couple of interesting points that stuck out to me. So one, I love that your sister is a volunteer firefighter. I think that is awesome. So you're part of the family, you're part of the team already before you even got into it, right? You have that connection. Yeah. I feel like stuff like that's important. So it's really cool that you have that kind of intimate connection, right? And then you use the word passion, and Jesse knows me, and anybody that follows anything that I do, I'm very big on that. So I feel like if used properly, passion is a great fuel. It's kind of a motivating thing. It goes synonymous with motivation and inspiration and drive and all that stuff. So I love that you use that word and to kind of frame what it is that you do and why you do it. And the education piece, like one, being a middle school teacher is probably not so different than being educating firefighters, because it's probably the same type of mentality. We're very adolescent, but I think that's seriously awesome. I'm a firm believer in education. I feel like, especially in the training realm, that's exactly what we are. We're educators, and far too many times we fail to understand the value and the importance of education. So I think it's great for all of us beneficially that we have someone like yourself that has an education background. That's really great. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
So FSRI, let's try saying that 3 times fast, is known for they're known for translating research into evidence-based training and resources for the fire service, right? So one question that I would have, and then I'll follow up with another, is, can you tell us about some of the key training opportunities and resources FSRI is currently offering?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I said in my introduction, I'm the manager of the education and training team. So my role and our team's role is to create all the education content that you see on the Fire Safety Academy, which is our learning management system. So if you have never checked out training.fsri.org, we have over 30 online classes that are on there that are teaching you about all of our research. So we have our research that comes out in reports, and it's my team's job to figure out how to distill it down into the training courses that you see on there. So we are, it's not something new. It's been around since 2020, but we're constantly updating the courses, creating new courses, and making them better. So that is a huge training opportunity and resource that we have on our online that's available for free. On top of those online resources, we've also been developing toolkits and hands-on training opportunities. You may or may not be familiar with our hosiery mechanics toolkit that has come out. And we also have other toolkits that are coming. We are developing continuing the conversation guides and other supplemental resources that are geared to helping you take that training and turn it into your own actionable resources as well. So it's not just about sitting there and watching the online content. It's about what you do with that content, what conversations you have after that content, and engage to really make change on the fire ground and with your department. And so those are a few of those key resources that we have.
No, nice. I like it. Jesse, just from your background, not just as a representative for them, right, but your background in training. So,
yes.
Can you maybe give us like some kind of background or how it applies to us and how that could benefit training officers, fire instructors, et cetera, from those type of resources that are offered already?
Absolutely. I think the whole goal of bringing the science to the streets, I think the Fire Safety Academy specifically has so many resources, as Meghan alluded to. And I think some of those resources that really stand out are the content, the cost, and then the format in terms of the time. So every fire department in probably anywhere has the same challenges. So the access to the content is incredible. So it's not content by opinion. It's content that's factual and that's based on actual science and research, and can be used for us, not just, on the content that we see online, but it's pretty easy to transfer into our own organization or translate into our language, so to speak. And then as it relates to the cost, usually there's a cost associated with everything. And believe it or not, there's no cost associated with the Fire Safety Academy. When I say time, we're trying to balance everything that we do day in and day out, the demand for service, the other details that we have, the ability to log in and be able to pause and play at our demand or on our demand is incredible. And one of my favorite features actually is a newer feature, and it again helps with that time factor. Maybe we don't have the time that day to go through the full 60 or 90 minute lesson, but now I can take a 12-minute lesson on building construction. So there's been a constant emphasis on making sure that the end user has what they need to be successful and to understand the message. So microlearning is a big part of that. And a lot of the resources that are on the Fire Safety Academy are done with that in mind. So it doesn't matter if we're watching it all together in the training room and we're talking about it as we go, or we have somebody who might have missed part of that and they pull it up and they're watching it on their phone or an iPad back in their bunk. But everything, the quality of the information, the access to the information, it really helps us on the front end of this. And being fire service practitioners, it eliminates any excuses that we had previously. All the information's at our fingertips.
Right. So not to take away from kind of our script, but you made a statement, and just for the audience or the listener, viewer, whatever, can you quickly just explain what you meant when you were talking about the microlearning? Because I found that interesting. I like that. I think that's I know what you're talking about, but I would like you to just explain, like for the viewer, like what that means and how it's so simple for them to benefit from.
Absolutely. And I'll turn it over to Meghan too, because one of the competitive advantages of FSRI is it's not just Meghan with the education and training background. The whole education and training team are like formally trained and educated practitioners as it relates to adult education. So from the fire service end of it, microlearning is great because we're dealing with all the other demands on our service. So yes, there is certainly quantity and quality on the FSA or the Fire Safety Academy, but having that balance when we're juggling the demands of a busy day or our standard shift schedule, microlearning is basically just repackaging that content into a very focused, very streamlined package that allows us to hit the high points and to make sure that we're retaining the most important part of whatever that is. Building construction is a good example of that. There's so much information on building construction, but what are those highlights? And that's, I think, how microlearning has helped us on the fire service end of this as practitioners. And I'm sure Meghan can speak at a much higher level to microlearning and the benefits of that.
Yeah, no. So one of the things for microlearning is essentially, in definition, it's content that is 3 to 5 minutes, and it focuses on one learning outcome and one topic. So instead of watching a 60-minute presentation that has 15 tactical considerations, now you're watching a 3 to 5 minute lesson on one tactical consideration. And the goal of that is that after you watch that one, you leave with the context of how we got to that tactical consideration, what that tactical consideration is, and how to take that tactical consideration and apply it on the fire ground. And so in that 3 to 5 minute training package, you are getting a full experience in that. And you can watch that and leave feeling confident that you have learned something today in only 3 to 5 minutes. And so it can be done anywhere, like Jesse said. And it's a perfect piece just to build on the instructor piece, where this is a perfect talking point where you assign your students to go and take this 3 to 5 minute lesson. And then you come back and you have a conversation about it and you think about how to apply it. Instead of, oh, I'm going to talk about all 15 tactical considerations. Now I can really focus on one actionable change today. What can you do better tomorrow? This is what I can do better tomorrow. And it really increases that accessibility, not just for individuals, but for instructors as well.
Right. I love that. So in today's society, it's very applicable. That's why I wanted you guys to elaborate on it. I know, like I said, we went kind of off of what we had discussed prior, but it's very, very important that you shared that, because today's society, everything is rapid pace, it's expedited, and people want the information now. And they also, and it's not an insult. You as an educator, Jesse and I are both educators. With this generation, and it's okay, it's just a fact though, with this generation, retention and attention span is not what it once was for us coming through, the baby boomer and Gen Xer area, and even certain millennials, who were the kind of the cuspers. It's very rapid fire. They want to see the information. They want to get as much of the relevant content up front and inside of that 3 to 5 minute window. So I wanted you guys to elaborate on it, because it seems to be a direction that's a necessity for us as educators for our firefighters. And that's okay. I'm not sitting here advocating against it. I won't say that it's the end all be all. However, and Jesse, so we do a drill in the fire service and it's all encompassed, right? There's multiple disciplines, multiple objectives, multiple facets of everything that we need to cover for this drill, right? Further that, the following month, the following week, whatever it is, whatever gaps may have been exposed of something that we weren't making the mark on, our company officers would then focus on just that topic, and we would then kind of wash down in a positive sense. We would wash down what the drill was, and let's say our apparatus positioning was a fail at this drill. So then the company officer would then in turn focus specifically on apparatus positioning and give more of a in-depth but like shortened version, so that retention is there. So that the next time we have the drill, those guys are like, hey, I remember that I have to position the apparatus properly, so this way we can execute what we need to do for the drill. And then that covers then into the field, God forbid, in the event of an emergency. So I love that you guys call it that. I think that it's very important, especially my hat's off to you, because a lot of us are playing catch up in a society and a generation that wants this information up front and as fast as possible. You guys are mastering giving the best relevant content in that short time frame. So good for you. I think that's really awesome. That's a great asset and tool.
Yeah, thank you. And I think it's important to highlight, like Jesse said, our team has a lot of education experience. So we are doing our best to stay on top of that education research that comes out. How is modern people learning? How are adults learning? And when we learn that, we know that, and we continue to broaden what we know about adult learners, we can take this content and help ensure that it's not just effective in terms of it's getting the research out there, but it's getting the research to the streets to allow the maximum amount of content to be learned and then applied. So it's definitely a huge part of our goal and important for our team.
Right. That's great stuff. So, I mean, you guys kind of covered that when we were talking about, how are these programs designed to meet real world firefighter needs? So we don't need to elaborate unless you find a reason to, because there was preparation prior. So that's okay. But I will say, like, finishing the microlearning piece, I would say it's very applicable to the real world. Speaking just for myself, just reiterate what I said before, like there are times where, and all of us have done it, even Megan, even you, like, even though you haven't per se sat through a fire academy class, you've sat through a higher level education. Right. And it's just like, it becomes like the teacher in Charlie Brown, the womp, womp, womp. And you're like, goodness, is this on the test? Is this going to be like what I have to have in the paper? Because there's a lot of stuff that becomes irrelevant. And I think that you guys are already doing that, is you're designing an opportunity for people to have the most bang for their buck inside of that respectable attention span. I think that that's great. I really do it. I love that you guys are doing that. I'm sorry. It caught me as soon as you said it. I'm like, talk about that,
Yeah, to follow up on it too, just more real world examples. We use it a lot as a preload to our training as well. So here's almost like a commercial. Here's a very focused lesson that we want you to see before we do the big drill. And now we're gonna elaborate on that conversation, on that material, and have some more dialogue. The other way that we use it is we embed those resources directly into our documents. So we have a residential fireground playbook, and that playbook has a collection of those resources, because the resources that you do see on the Fire Safety Academy, when you're looking at those courses, there's a lot of, if you click that tab at the top, you can get a lot more information, sample drills, time to task drills. You can also go to a lot of those resources that are featured there. So we took a lot of those little bite-sized videos and put them into our playground, or our playbook. So when it talks about exterior fire control, here's a 3 to 5 minute video on fire control. When it talks about size up considerations, like the prereqs for 1403 course, we put that right in the playbook. So it's used as a refresher for somebody reading that playbook. They want more information, they can click it and go straight to the source. And that's been a big advantage in terms of, that's a real world benefit that any fire department can realize.
Yeah, I love that. I love the playbook. I love that you guys call it that. I think that is in our thing. There's a lot of connections and metaphoric references to sports, so it's perfect to use that as the name and as the analogy, because it resonates with most of us. It resonates. In my experience in the fire service, most firefighters, especially the successful ones, were involved with some kind of competitive sports prior to them rising in their profession. So it's really cool that you use that as well. All right. So in addition to the training and the education initiatives, FSRI also engages in extensive research to improve firefighter safety. Like you had said before, bringing the science to the streets. I love that. Like I initiated the show with saying we're bringing science in my show. And I say that, with a smile, because I feel like science gets a bad rep, especially with just the way the course of the nation has gone with certain things. But in our thing, it's very important. So what are some major research projects or topics that FSRI is currently focusing on? And how do you anticipate these will impact the fire service in the coming years?
Yeah, absolutely. So since 2001, we have expanded our capabilities so much to cover quite a broad scope of fire safety research. So we are looking into emerging hazards such as lithium-ion batteries and electric vehicles, as well as the wildland-urban interface. As we continue to study near-miss incidents, fire damage patterns, and using fire modeling and fire dynamic simulator. And as you know, firefighter cancer has become a huge topic in the fire service. And so we're constantly working on instrumentation and resources to better understand PPE and our exposures that firefighters face on the fire ground. Our research team is conducting, like I said, experiments on electric vehicles, and not just looking at electric vehicles, but on the size up and suppression of those electric vehicles. And also looking at we just kicked off a project on the fire dynamics and firefighting tactics in multi-story structures. And so these projects are just a few that I mentioned that our research team is working on. And in every project, the main goal for us at the end is to come with actionable resources and we can share and translate to the findings for the fire service. And so it's really exciting to have seen our team grow so much since 2021, 2021. But it is, our broadened experience just continues to make us look at fire in a holistic way and be able to share those experiences with you. And so I'll turn it over to Jesse to talk about how he anticipates these impacting the fire service in the coming years.
Yeah, I think, one thing I've learned from my very limited experience with FSRI is there's never a dull moment. There's always something being worked on. And oftentimes there's probably, countless things being worked on. But when I think back to when I got in the fire service, I got in the fire service 2001, the things that we know now versus what we knew then. So not just on the tactical end of things, but what we know on the back end of things. So the exposure to carcinogens, the ability of our PPE, how does our PPE work? So these are all things that when I was a young firefighter were honestly an afterthought. Never really imagined that we would know so much about it now. And now when we're putting together a turnout gear spec, turns out there's a lot more to that than just what color gear we're going to have. And being able to go back to these resources and these course offerings and technical reports, we can make far more educated decisions on what we're trying to do. So I think the ability of the fire service to literally click their way to the source of this information and to do everything, in a factual, professional, and productive way versus just, my opinion or your opinion, I think it's tremendous. And it just continues to be translated into a format that I think whether it's a microlearning stuff we talked about or the display, I would tell you that there's as much attention to detail put into the methodology of what's developed by FSRI as there is the attention to detail and the research that's being produced. So I think those two things work hand in hand. And I think the ability of the fire service to be directly involved in that in a variety of ways just continues to push that adaptation and evolution of the Fire Safety Academy. So I think we're incredibly fortunate as a fire service to have these resources at our fingertips.
Right. I would wholeheartily. I didn't mean to cut you off, Megan. Jesse, you and I have been doing this the same amount of time. We're the same age. You just more handsome than me, but better genetics. But that's that French in you. No, but I agree. Like I feel like leaps and bounds. Like who'd have thought? Look at what we're talking about today, right? So like Jesse, like we didn't have this. And I'm not like, this is just the way I talk. So like, we didn't have this shit, like we didn't have it. We did not have this when Jesse and I first started. When you joined the fire service, you were getting hand-me-down gear that was well past its date. I remember my first coat was the long coats. I had bunker pants, but they didn't have enough coats. So I had the coat that went down past my knees. And that coat was probably from I think it was from 1988 or something like that was the coat, at the time it was only 12 or 13 years old, which is, not old, but the point is it had been so outdated. So to have that information and the last thing I just wanted to touch on just based off what you guys were saying. So for the listener, the fire service is consumed with opinions, and that's okay because most of us have some frame of reference or experience to have come to that opinion. These are actual incidents and actual potential incidents that you guys run these studies and run this data and essentially look at it from literally all angles to see what happens with what. And I think that is so cool because, the expression, there's 1,000 ways to skin a cat, right? So the information that you're bringing forward to all of us is beneficial because you're not giving us your opinion on like, well, all fires, this type of fire burns the same, it's only this type of gear that you have to use. No, you guys are literally like peeling every onion layer possible and looking at it from all angles. And I think that's huge in the science of our thing. And I think that's where a lot of us get hurt, or our egos take advantage of us, and we don't look at anything from other perspectives. So what you represent is extremely important to the education and survivability of our fire service.
And to that, nothing that we develop, whether it is a research project or an education output, is developed in a silo. We always involve the fire service in developing our research plans, whether it's through a technical panel or, as Jesse mentioned at the beginning, through our training advisory committee, which is a huge way that we have involved the fire service to influence the way that our education outputs have gone over the past 2 years. So we have a group of 15 fire service instructors and representatives of training across entire North America that are involved in all of our projects that provide us with feedback and guide our future and help us ensure that not only is this content important and research-based and fact-based, but it's relevant and it is able to make change for you. At the end of the day, we work for the fire service. You may not sign my paycheck, but I am accountable to you and to all of you in terms of helping you become the most safe and effective firefighter out there. And so it's really important to me that we are always having those conversations, and it's never done in a silo.
Yeah, I agree. Jesse, go ahead, man. Jump in.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you talked about generational differences a little bit. And I think sometimes as people in the fire service or trainers in the fire service, sometimes we think of the Y generation, like why as a negative connotation. But as somebody who lived through that, you alluded to your training. I wanted to know why I was going to cut a hole in a roof, or why I was going to put a fan at the door, or why I shouldn't flow water or I should flow water. And, everything was so vocational at a point to where, the answers were like, well, you'll know when it's time. Well, I don't know how to know when it's time. I want to know the critical factors. I want to know why, when, and how. And I think one of the benefits through all of the studies is it's been translated into, something as simple as a course on vertical ventilation or positive pressure attack, positive pressure ventilation, all of these different topics that we've all wondered about at some point in our training. Not only did the initial resource exist, but this is one of the other real, benefits of FSRI and the Fire Safety Academy. Just having it one time is not good enough. It all goes through a process of being improved. And whether that improvement is just the way the content looks or the way the student clicks through it, or, hey, we learned something else that could help somebody, it's important to keep updating that. And that's a big part of what's offered through FSRI. And one of the things that makes my job on the fire service end that much easier is it's always up to date information. So now I can answer the why behind something, why maybe one thing would be better than the next, or why one thing could be improved because now I know more about it, whether it's the size of a ventilation opening or how this can be better coordinated with the entire fire ground, suppression and ventilation and search and so on. It's just a phenomenal tool that we have in the fire service, and one that, over 100,000 people have already taken advantage of. And it's pretty cool to see that on the back end of it. And, it's just a great resource for the fire service.
Yeah. And this month we actually released 3 updated courses. Like Jesse said, there's the horizontal ventilation course, the vertical ventilation course, and our contamination risk reduction course as well. So if you haven't been on the Fire Safety Academy in a while, or maybe you even took those courses when they first came out, some of them are foundational research. definitely go back, check them out again, and see the updates that we've made to our courses as well.
I love that. First of all, that's awesome that you name those because it's all encompassing. So I want the people to understand, if they're not familiar with what you guys have and what the Institute's about. It's not just. I'm not undermining it. The R is in the acronym. It's not just research. It's information and education based on the research, and that's what people need to understand. We oftentimes we get like almost like nervous when we hear this research thing. It's remember, Jesse, the whole hit it hard from the yard thing. And it was a concept that we were using in the fire service when I first joined. If you saw that you had a couple windows that were working as you're about to force entry, throw a little water in the window if it's already self-vented before you went in. And it was like just something that you did, right? And then all of a sudden somebody coined a name and it was like, oh, this is the problem with the research in the fire service. And it's like, dude, calm down, man. If we never had any room for growth, we would still be, going in with a cigar and a horse-drawn steam pumper and, getting ourselves hurt and dying by the time we were 50. Calm down. This is important shit. There's a lot of relevant content. So I like that you shared the different things that are also available. And then you added the constant refresher, refining, fine-tuning, whatever, We're in an ever-evolving society, and the fire service are stewards and customer servants to society. Okay, that's literally why we exist. We are a service agent provider, and we need to understand that we have to adapt and respond to, not literally, but I mean just mentally, respond to these changes that are coming around us, whether we like them or not. Like you mentioned, lithium ion, not for political views, but because of my background in the fire service, I'm very nervous about the whole lithium ion thing. And it's nice that there is people like your guys' group to have like that. Hey, it's not a buzzword. We're trying to educate people that there is a science behind this, and we're trying to collect as much data as we can so we can not only make our responders safer when they respond to these types of emergencies, but to make them more sustainable to society. Like it's cool to have, a Tesla, but is it safe? And that's where we want to, like, people like you, like find the way to make stuff like that, not just cool, but safe, So not to pull from you guys, just that kind of leads me into the next talking point. As we look toward the future, what are some areas of specific challenges that FSRI plans to address to continuing enhancing firefighter tactics and safety measures? And then we'll have the follow-up to it. But, I think it's relevant to what we were just discussing. So either one of you can take that one first.
Yeah.
Turn over to you.
Yeah, I just think in terms of our research, I think we highlighted where we are and where we plan to go, and we continuously are looking at that and trying to understand that next topic and trying to get ahead of that next research topic and trying to make sure that we have resources to address all of the concerns that you guys are bringing and to us. And so I think lithium ion batteries is a huge one, not only for the research, but for the training, because it's one thing when we release the research projects and the papers, but it's another thing to turn that into that actionable training course. And so I see that being a very important step for us to take in the next few years to ensure that, we right now have a science of lithium ion battery course, which is very important to understanding that fundamental level. But now, based on our research, what do we do with that? What are the suppression techniques? What are the size up considerations? Research does take time. And as much as we all wish that we could flip and switch and have the answers, it does take time. But we are actively engaging in searching for those next research priority areas and working to release training to them. Another one that I'd like to highlight is the wildland urban interface. We've been actively involved in research there, and we'll have our first course coming out in 2025 that is going to address the wildland firefighter. So we're really excited to provide resources to support that area of growth as well. Anything, Jesse?
Yeah, I was going to say too, a big part of fire engineering is FDIC. That's it's an incredible opportunity for fire service people around the world to go and learn different things. So one of the new resources that's being developed is kind of being timed with FDIC as it relates to tactical considerations, not just for the fire service, but also for the public. So when we talk about being effective firefighters, how do we improve our effectiveness? How do we improve our ability to help the people that we're responding for? So we have our tactical considerations, but now how do we provide the general public with some tactical considerations? So that's only going to help us with our search, with our suppression, with all the things that we're trying to do. So that's a big one. And the whole concept there is to tie the fireground knowledge to research-based education messages. So now our fire department, like all the fire departments, October, we want to make sure we have messages for the public. So it just helps us expand on the messages that are already there, close before you doze. And that incident doesn't begin with our arrival as a fire department. That incident begins with that occupant realizing there's a problem and calling 911. So what can they do in that interim, either to prevent that incident from occurring, or once that incident occurs, how can they use same things that we would use, whether that's isolation and isolating themselves or closing a door, simple things. But that's a big thing there that's also coming down the pipeline.
And I think that speaks to our view of training as a holistic view. We got a lot of information out quickly. Clearly, we have 30 courses in our Fire Safety Academy based on our research. But now we're taking a step back and looking for those gap areas in partnership with our training advisory committee of what else do you need in order to be effective and to educate each other. And one of the big areas that we noticed we can provide resources in is for instructors. And so in the future, we are going to be focusing on enhancements that we can make to our Fire Safety Academy, as well as in resources we can provide to the instructor to teach fundamental fire science tactics. And so being an education background, it's not just here is what the fire triangle is, it's here's what the fire triangle is, and here are resources that you can use to teach it. Here's instructor guides, here's lesson plans, here's participant guides, here's videos and toolkits that you can use to have a broader reach, because now we're providing resources to instructors that then will go ahead and instruct their students and be more confident in that as well. So that is a huge area that we are going to be focusing on in the next few years on our team to provide resources for too.
Yeah, I'm not trying to overhype this or provide a bunch of hyperbole, but as a fire service instructor, I'm telling you the resources that are being developed are really a game changer. So it's a lot easier for me to deliver that lesson when I know what right looks like. So being able to follow that script and see a small snippet of whether that's conducting a candle experiment or a dollhouse burn or something to that effect, it makes me so much more equipped and better equipped as an instructor to deliver that lesson in a way that reaches that outcome that we're looking for, which is building more effective members of the fire service. So it goes into that mission, again, back to bringing the science to the streets. The instructor resources are going to be a very large part of that.
Yeah. No, that's extremely important. For me, as a person who's passionate about fire service instruction, and as an instructor, it's very important for us to know that you guys are taking that approach and recognize it's not about buzzwords. It's about finding the best way to get information based off of something that happened or preventing something from happening, and getting that out to everybody. I love that. I think that the fact that you guys are being proactive is extremely important. So like research is reactive, right? But you guys are taking that opportunity from the research and being proactive in how you're going to disseminate that information to the rest of the fire service and in turn for society, because like I said earlier, that's what we do. We exist to protect society. So I love that you guys are doing all that stuff. I love the tools that you guys have that are available. You already covered a lot of those, which is really cool. It's great. So before we go into the last part, I just want to say hypothetical. So I am, and I'm not trying to put you guys on the spot. I'm just asking. So like, let's say I called you, Megan, right? I don't mean to put you on a spot specifically, but this is who I would call, right? So like, let's say I Googled FSRI and your contact information came up and I'm like, hey, I'm a newly appointed training officer in XYZ fire department. And I'm trying to just gain some information. Can you help me navigate as to like what it is that I could do? What would be some suggestions or direction, guidance, whatever, that you could give a person like that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. I think the first place that I would start is by sending you to the Fire Safety Academy and having you take the evidence-based structural firefighting course. If you, as any person, really has not taken a course from that is the perfect place to start. It is based on NFPA 1700 and it provides the baseline for, a lot of topics that is focused in there on our research. And from there, once you have that experience, I'd encourage you to come back to me and we could start to look at some of the instructor tools that are built into the Fire Safety Academy. I would encourage you to become a power user for your department, and through affiliating with your department and then requesting power user access, you can then become and be able to see the training records for anyone that is in your department, actually. And so you can download your CSV files and upload them into other learning management systems. And from there, you can start assigning trainings and seeing what people are doing. I would encourage you then to start assigning micro lessons to your participants and using our continuing the conversation worksheets that are in the courses to have those roundtable discussions. And then once you're very confident in that, I would encourage you to try group learning. And so this is a new feature that we offer in our LMS since our update in January. And this allows everyone to sit down and take the course together and encourage discussion and talking about the course. And then at the end, you scan a QR code and then you go and take the assessment on your own to get credit. And so as a training officer, I would encourage you to take the resources that we have and to create conversations around them to create meaningful change. And don't look at it as something where it's like, okay, I already have this training, so then this or this. It's this and this. It's how can you use our resources to enhance what you're already doing, because chances are you are already doing it in certain types of ways, whether, as Jesse said before, it's pre-work, it's homework, it's extra credit, for lack of a better word. This resource is there to help you and support you, not something that you should look at and be like, I don't want to do anything else. No, it's how do you use these tools? And those are a few ways that I would. And I think Jesse can probably speak to a couple of examples, maybe more of how he's implemented that.
I had planned on putting him on the spot because it's very similar, prior to my new role, I was doing what you're doing, Jesse. So I know we kind of touched on it, but I wanted to hear from you on just that is like, you in that role, like give us some suggestions, and I apologize that it's kind of on the spot, but just some suggestions of like how this is applicable to us. What's good for us to use this, because so many of them are so afraid to network and to reach out and to tap into outside resources, and they're damning their capabilities because they're focused on just what they know, and what they fail to realize is all they know is very confined.
Yeah. And so the questions you talked about, the scenario of a new training officer getting a hold of somebody from FSRI and saying, hey, how do I integrate this into what we do? And that's another example too. Those questions occur, right? We want people to want to do this. So it's another example of how we leverage the training advisory committee as well. So then you have a group of fire service professionals who now that can go out to them. Anybody have experience with this? So these are all things that occur and have occurred with respect to making sure that person who calls gets what they need. And on our end of the fire service, our goal as trainers is really to decode that message and make sure. So it's being decoded from the research by FSRI. And now as that instructor, I'm decoding that message just a little bit more. So this is not by design. These props are always on my desk. Building construction. Building construction is such an important thing. As much as I would like to have somebody I could call to come help me frame a garage or something, that's not why we need people to understand building construction. We need members of the fire service to understand building construction as it relates to the effect of the fire on that structure. So taking a simple little prop that we get from free from a construction site and matching up the time on that prop with the time that's labeled in the studies, that's what we want people to take away from it. The difference between conventional framing and lightweight, modern framing, and the impact of the fire on the structure. So I think decoding that message and taking what's been developed by FSRI already and putting it back, localizing it to the needs of our community or the demographics of our community. We have a lot of new structures. We have a lot of old structures too. So what's the difference? Why do we care? I think that's the general takeaway is understanding. Before I took that course on understanding the structural stability of engineered lumber, I didn't know what a truss was. I didn't know that had a top chord and a bottom chord, but I can draw that out on a piece of wood pretty easy. And now everybody in that group knows the same thing. And now somebody else knows a little bit more about it. And we can keep moving and keep that snowball rolling to the point where, we've got this thing that is much bigger than any one of our individual skill sets, because we know how to take that, where to get the information, and then how to take that information and put it into the needs of our department or the needs of our community.
Yeah. And I think I'd also encourage a training officer, as they're watching the courses, as they're reading the research reports, as they're looking through our body of material, to always think about ways to connect it to them. Like Jesse said, it's about decoding that information to who a firefighter is that you are instructing. And so if you are not in a big city FDNY with huge buildings, that is not part of your first due and not something, then don't make that connection, right? Make those connections that are specific to your people, because that is how you're going to ensure that they remember it and then they apply it when they're on the fire ground too. So always look through that lens when you're observing all our materials.
Yeah, I agree. I love everything you guys were saying. All right, so I would be remiss. I'm on the board, so I have to, as a steward to the board, but also, this is a fire engineering podcast, right? So you guys have a presence out at FDIC. I know you guys send some folks out there. So if you don't mind, for those that are going to be attending FDIC, which I hope that you are, those of you who are listening and watching and paying attention, make sure you register for FDIC. But yeah, so for those that are going to be attending, it's in this April 2025. What can they expect from you guys, from FSRI's presence? And are there any particular sessions or demonstrations or resources that the attendees should be on the lookout for?
Yeah, that's a great question. Excited to see everybody there. Definitely come by, say hi. One of the big things for us is that we will have a booth in the main expo center. So that's likely where I will be most of the week, answering questions, talking about training. I'm passionate about it. Come talk to me about it. Come let me help you solve problems and answer questions. So come say hi there. We're also going to have workshops and classroom sessions covering all of our research for the fire service. And all new this year in Lucas Oil Stadium, we're going to be demonstrating our hose-stream mechanics prop and have live demonstrations of our hose-stream mechanics prop. So we're very excited about this new opportunity as well, to see it in operation and get access to the toolkit and build it at home and ask questions about our hose-stream mechanics prop. So we are very excited about that.
I love that. I don't want to, one, I'm not going to put you in a spot. And two, I'm not going to have you, if you could just give the trailer version hose stream mechanics prop because I want people to attend. So if you give all the secrets away, what they're going to expect, and they're going to be like, well, I already know what it is, right? So to help sex it up a little bit so we can entice people to cross the road and go over to Lucas to check that out. What do you have with that? What, if you don't mind, what's that? What's that kind of consist of?
Yeah. Jesse's been a huge user of it, so I'll let him go ahead and take it.
Yeah, we've got one here. It's a phenomenal prop. The whole idea here is don't just take our word for it. You can see it yourself. So whether you have the hose stream prop or it inspires you to build a hose stream prop, or you get an acquired structure, you have your own training facility, the idea is we're going to show you in person what this all means. So whether that's stuff from the exterior, whether that's, different tips and tactics for attic fires, whether that's your actual advance down the hallway, the idea here is proper mapping wins. How do our nozzles work? And now you can see it in action. You can see what right looks like. You can see how just changing the plane of your nozzle provides a completely different, ability to cool the surfaces and gases and so on. So the whole intent here is to show you in person, let you see it over and over again, that this is not something that is exclusive to one scenario. It's truly being good at what we do and being students of the game. And that's the concept, is to let people see this firsthand. And to get those takeaways themselves. Just
a follow-up, just for the listener and the attendee, are they going to need PPE to participate in said training?
Great question. No. So this will be training that we're going to be having that is not PPE based. We will also be we're going to have our data trailer there to show you some of the ins and outs of the science that goes into what we do, the data we capture and things like that. So it'll be really great to see that too.
Oh, awesome. Very, very, very cool. I will say, and I'm not doing a shameless plug. So a lot of the things that you guys are talking about, so both of you are very familiar with PJ Norwood, he's a dear friend of mine. Him and I actually just co-authored an article together, and a lot of the things that we've discussed in this podcast, PJ covered, obviously with no surprise to either one of you, he covered a lot of that in the article. So I'm excited for when that comes out, because it's a good representation of the stuff that you guys are working on. PJ really covered on a lot of that stuff in our article. And I feel like it complemented the article. We were going for, we titled it, Are you studying film or are you watching film? Something like that. And it was, like I said earlier, about how fire service is almost synonymous, metaphorically, with athletics and sports, and athletes study film. So we talked about a lot of the preparation behind that and using that as a metaphor as to how you build your training. And PJ really honed on a lot of the stuff that you guys work on with FSRI, and I'm just really excited about it coming out. So it was a shameless plug, but it wasn't intended that way. It just, everything you guys are covering, I'm like, shit, man, PJ had 6 paragraphs on this stuff in his article. It's awesome, So I'm really excited for when that comes out, because it's a lot of good stuff. It's a testament to everything you guys are working on.
We're so lucky to work with PJ. He's actually one of the members of our training advisory committee, so he has an intimate knowledge of what we do at FSRI. So we're lucky to work with him.
He is a tremendous resource, and again, his ability to decode the message and put it into a format that's easily understood. I can tell you, our own members have taken classes from PJ Norwood at FDIC, and they come back and they're like, hey, did you know that blank? Have you ever heard of PJ Norwood? So again, just another great example of how you can get the information. And back to Megan's point, having the booth at FSRI, my biggest advice to anybody in the fire service is don't be afraid to ask the question. So whether that question is at one of the workshops that somebody from FSRI is delivering, whether that question is at the hose stream prop where you can see this, or whether you want to go to the booth and stop by, don't be afraid to ask the question. That's one of the primary reasons that FSRI is there and has such a full court press, so to speak, at FDIC, is we want people to have the information that they need and that they want to be as effective as they can possibly be.
Right. So final words from the two of you. you guys want to rock, paper, scissors, I don't care, but whoever wants to go first. But, anything that that we didn't cover that you want to touch on, that you want to, lay out there, or information on how people could get in touch with you guys, or more information on how they can, follow along with everything that you guys are working on. But the floor is absolutely yours.
Yeah, so to answer that question about how to get in touch with us, our website is FSRI.org. We keep it nice and simple. So check out that. And if you have questions, you can contact us through that website. And of course, staying up to date on all of our social media channels to see what's coming, what's being worked on. And then, as I've said throughout, but our training.fsri.org is our fire safety academy. So again, trying to keep it simple. If you haven't visited it in a while, check it out again. Join over 100,000 of the members of the fire service who are, seeing our training. And the final words from myself would be, well, thank you for having me. And as, you go out and are training fire service members and, being involved, thank you for doing that. And I encourage you to always question what's going on and always continue to learn. Stay a student for the rest of your life. I know I do, and it is humbling and also important to continue to push me and use FSRI's research, use our resources to encourage you to always stay a student and to move forward.
I feel like this is the point where I should get really close to the camera with a call to action. But that's how I'm going to end it is, if you don't already have the account, take the 5 minutes and create the account. And once you create that account, again, don't be afraid to click around. Take whatever course seems interesting to you. Ironically enough, I would recommend the same course that, if you had asked me, that Meghan recommended. The evidence-based tactics class covers so much content. But don't be afraid to click around in there, because at the end of the day, there's really no excuse not to take advantage of this resource. There's so much time and energy and passion that has been put into the resources that you see on the Fire Safety Academy. And I feel like if we're truly trying to be the best we can be in the fire service, then that's where there's really no excuse, no reason not to check it out. We talked about cost. That's not the factor. We can all make time, 5 minutes, 10 minutes here and there to better understand this. And again, the content, the quality of the content, the quantity of the content, there just really is truly no excuse not to become a student of the game and to at least understand what is being said and how that could impact us in our own individual organizations, or how it could impact me as a captain with my crew, or there's just so many different ways to have this information make an impact back in our own department. So that's what I'd like to say is, if you don't have the account, go create one. If it's been a while since you've logged in and taken a class, dust off that login and get back in there and try something else, because it's all there to make us better at what we do. And I think that's everybody's goal in the fire service, to be as good as we can. So.
Right. No, I love it. I appreciate both of your time. I learned a lot, and you guys, you kind of re-inspired me on a lot of different things, as my career has kind of changed course and direction. I say that with so much positivity and optimism. But no, so it's, just since it has, I'll say that, both of you honed on something that I religiously say, is be a student. You have to be a student. You have to, even if you're an educator, in order to be a well-rounded educator, you are always a student, because you're always learning, so that you can educate the people on the content and the relevant content and updated content that they need. This is a fire service, lives and property. You never know enough. And there's always something that's going to change in the ever evolving society we live in. So I appreciate what your organization represents. I appreciate the time that both of you put into stuff like this. I think that it's unfortunately, so like, people know what FSRI is, and everybody knows what UL is. But we don't utilize the resource enough. So I think at the end of this, my goal for the listener is, like you both said, get on FSRI.org, create an account if you don't have an account, and start taking some classes. It inspired me. I'm not ashamed to admit that I haven't been, and I need to, because we're stupid. This is the way I talk. Jesse knows me. There's no political way to be like, well, you're not that. You're stupid if you're not utilizing this free content and resource available to you. You're an idiot if you're not. So I leave you all with that. But I appreciate both of your time. I think that this is great information. I want you to both keep doing what you're doing, because you're making our thing better, and that's what's important. So thank you both. I hope to see you both. Well, I know I'll link up with you, Jesse, but I hope to see you both out at FDIC. Meghan, it'd be great to physically meet you. I'll stop by to say hi.
Yeah.
But seriously, thank you guys. And that's it. I appreciate it. I'll end it with get on FSRI.org, register if you're not. Take some classes, register for FDIC and attend FDIC, and go and see them at Lucas. This is Dave McGlynn, Fire Engineering Podcast, the training officer. Everybody be safe. Thank you.
For all your medication and narcotic tracking needs, check out the LogRX app, created by career fire and EMS professionals. That's LogRX.com.
This podcast is brought to you by Flex 7 from TenCate Protective Fabrics. Flexible, comfortable, and powered with the strength of enforced technology. Flex 7 outer shell fabric is made to move. To learn more, visit tencatefabrics.com/Flex 7.
In the world of firefighting and public safety, reliability is key. That's why for over 2 decades, first responders nationwide have trusted the FireStore as their go-to source for essential equipment, apparel, and accessories. Visit thefirestore.com online or in-store